is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Also, I know Elaine crammed it today or last night and just finished it in time to join our discussion. So hopefully she has something that she wants to say about it. But yeah, a little bit of a thriller murder mystery again for us. I've put a little bit about our author, Lucy Foley, in the chat, but I can recap a little bit here. She was born in 1985 in London. She was educated at Durham University and University College London. She still lives there in London. And she is a novelist and best known for her works of historical fiction. She only recently, in the last few years, has gotten into these thrillers and mysteries, but they've really taken off and have, I think, become overshadowing the work that she has done before that. She had published The Hunting Party in 2019. I'm interested if anyone had read that and can speak to how that one compares. And then The Guest List is from this year. She's working on another one. I know they're working on film versions of The Guest List and The Hunting Party. Yeah, so what'd you guys think? Anyone that maybe recently finished it, maybe crammed it like Elaine did and just got it done and has a fresh hot take they want to tell us, feel free to raise your virtual hand and I'll ask to unmute you and you can tell us what you thought. Anyone? And if you don't know what to say and you want a little bit of an icebreaker, you can talk about maybe something that you, other than Guinness, that you would recommend pairing with this book. I mean, this book is set in Ireland. There's a lot of drinking in the book. There's a lot of straight vodka drinking, which I don't know about you, but I don't drink my vodka straight that much. I don't know, it seems more of a Russian thing, but apparently they enjoyed it. They enjoyed a lot of drinks in this one. But would you have a wedding on this island? Another thing to think about. I mean, I know it was a deal in a contest they won, but it seemed like kind of a dark, I don't know, depressing place. It didn't seem like anyone was too excited. Now, interesting thing about that, as we wait for a hand, Lucy Foley herself originally wanted to set this in Greece. And she even had a deal where like the publisher paid for her to take basically a vacation work trip to Greece to kind of scout locations and get inspired and write about it. And the more she started thinking about that, she was like, wait a minute, there's already Mamma Mia, there's already My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I can't do like a big wedding story set in Greece. It doesn't feel right. And it's too sunny and bright and happy here. I need to find a place that is a little more conducive to this type of story. And so she moves it to Ireland. And she even, interestingly enough, said that she changed her idea of who the killer was a third of the way through writing this book. And I don't know who the original killer is yet. I'm wondering if she has made that public, if any of you know, if she's expressed that in any interviews, or if you have any thoughts also as to who you think she originally intended for the culprit to be. But I see Lauren has her hand up. So Lauren, I'm gonna ask to unmute you and lower your hand. Talk to us, Lauren.
So, I would personally have had a wedding way out there, but you did notice toward the end it said one of the reasons she had it was because her dad had cut her off with funds, and
right.
They had given her this great big 50% discount, which we find out, at the very end why that was given.
Yep.
But I just thought it was interesting because she was founder of this magazine, so she should have been doing well enough on her own, but important to have for her to have these certain things that she just had to have, and it was a bargain. We all like a bargain.
That's right. Who doesn't like a bargain, even if it comes with some strings? Unfortunately, she didn't know quite how tight those strings were. Lauren, do you have any thoughts on who you think may have been the original intended murderer, if you will, in this story? And while reading it, did you guess? Did you figure it out, or did you have thoughts of someone else possibly being the suspect?
Well, when you read about what the book is about, they talk about the innkeeper, they called her, I can't remember, but the person that owned the venue, she was listed as one of the characters. So I figured there was more about her than we knew, but I never guessed Fat Freddy or whatever they called him was the guy that was the other gentleman with her. It was
Excellent. Well,
hard to
that's
say. I think you change, from minute to minute, you're like, oh, it could be Johnny's going to do it. No, I mean, everybody had a reason. That guy was a jerk.
right. And then another thing, she was obviously inspired by the great Agatha Christie. And if she had gone even further along those lines where you're saying where everyone had a reason and Will was such a jerk, you would have ended up into more of a Murder on the Orient Express type of situation
Yep.
where there's like actually more than one killer. And I think she
Yeah.
wanted to not quite cross that line. I have heard from others who have read it, and maybe some tonight can confirm that there are some striking similarities between this and The Hunting Party, the book that she wrote before it. And I'm interested in exploring some of those themes, especially how she seems to have, she wants to raise issues with big groups of old friends, and can we trust them? And what are these friendships based on? And maybe she herself has felt like she isn't in the group or something. The way it seems to be like both of those have had that in them. I see Via has her hand up. Via, talk to us.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, as far as who might have been the suspect, I guess I was thinking it might have been John O, because there would have been some kind of rough justice in that he and Will were both involved in the quote unquote accident that really was almost a murder of their schoolmate. And so by Will being killed, that would be his just desserts. And then maybe John O being punished for killing Will, he would get his just desserts. So I guess he was the most logical one. Yeah, I did kind of think that the innkeeper would be involved somehow, but I didn't really completely see that coming till the end. So that was a surprise for me. And as far as other things about this book, I would say that it was not really my favorite book. I think, well, first of all, on the positive side, I thought the location was intriguing. I thought that was really an interesting spot to bring this story to life. And I especially liked, those little instances, those references to the bog, because that made it very kind of, oh my goodness, can you imagine getting stuck in the bog and being sucked down into the, whatever that is that sucks you down into the earth. So that was very creepy and a good effect there. I think that the thing that I dislike, well, first of all, also on the positive side, I thought that the author was quite imaginative in the structure of the book. I always kind of knew where I was, even though we kept switching back and forth. That did make it interesting. And built the suspense. But on the other hand, part of that made me feel that it was a little gimmicky. The whole structure seemed just a little bit too gimmicky to me, a little bit too every single point of view shown, too many points of view, and constant cliffhangers after every little chapter to build suspense. And it was a little wearing for me after a while. It was just a little bit too much. And the characters. This was the most unlikable group of characters I have ever seen. I really didn't relate to just about anybody in this book. And I don't need to have my characters be all likable and great. I mean, you do want to have villains and you want to have bad people. But to get involved in the story, for me, I think you need to have kind of the good and the bad, and you need to have something relatable to them. And here we had this whole group of, reunion from their horrible high school that they went to, and this group of 30-something people at a wedding just playing these drinking games. This just did not go over for me. And the amount that everybody drank in this novel, I almost thought that, if anyone was going to get killed off, maybe half the cast was going to get killed off for alcohol poisoning. There was just so much of it. It just kept going and going. Oh my goodness. So that made it very, it was rather not a fun read for me, just because I did not get into these characters, and I thought they were juvenile, and they were, it was just over the top with the bad stuff that they were doing. But overall suspenseful, you know, it was entertaining. I wouldn't, this is not high literature for me, but if we rate it according to entertainment value, it was definitely an entertaining read. That's my
Thanks,
take.
Via. You're right. It's definitely not high literature, and we do a few books like this. You know, every year we used to have a thing we called our January romp. This would have fit nicely into the January romp category. I think we've since, because of COVID, who knows when these romps happen now, but they happen. I saw someone else compare this to maybe more akin to the Chain type of book that we've read, where it's just very plot driven, you know, and you might not get that invested in the characters or really come away with you know, a great new theory on life or anything. But if you play the game and you're entertained, even if you're not drinking along at home, hopefully you at least were entertained enough. I do think it is written in a style that is meant to just keep you moving, and you don't think about it too much. It is like every chapter ends with like, well, I have to read one more, or just a little bit more. Now that happened, you know, it's just like constant cliffhangers. I have read that she envisions it as not necessarily a film, but she's hoping for the 6 to 10 episode like streaming series, which I think would fit very nicely for this type of thing. You can just imagine, you know, each episode, each sort of chapter of it is like a different suspect, you know, and you keep changing your mind as to who you think is the murderer. But I've said a couple of years ago that I have wanted to read more mysteries, and I am always looking for recommendations. There are authors I haven't read yet, like Ruth Ware, that keeps coming up that people seem to like, and I'm always interested in other ideas for who we should read next, if we are going to read fun ones like these every once in a while. So thanks, Via. You said it isn't your favorite, so at some point in the chat, tell us what your favorite is, though. I want to know. Charmaine's got her hand up. Charmaine, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us.
Hey, good to be back here. It's been a while. I'm down in Texas, and I've invaded your book club. Maybe someday I'll move up so I can officially be there in person. But I'm glad to be back. I always enjoy the discussion. I've been here for a couple different books. So I just wanted to go back to one of the first things you said, Jess, is a destination wedding, right? That's kind of the hype of what this was a destination wedding. I had a destination wedding in Canada. Thankfully, the groom was not murdered. And, you know, it didn't turn out that he had been a murderer when he was a child. So good news, we're married 15 years later. But
congratulations.
Thanks. I just wanted to throw that in there, that this is a destination wedding, and I can see, and having one myself, people, when they hear that, they think, well, you're fancy. Like, oh, a destination wedding. Oh, and but I mean, for us, it really wasn't. It was just half of our family were Canadian, and we wanted them there. So, and they wouldn't travel to the States, so we went to Canada. So, but anyways, that's what I kind of thought back to my own wedding a little bit, and how we had all of our guests at a hotel in Canada, and you know, but like I said, nobody got murdered, so it was okay. And then I predicted the result at the end as characters were introduced. I thought, oh, she's visiting somebody at the graveyard, somebody that went to school. Like I felt like I knew what was going to happen. And I felt like it was a little bit Catcher in the Rye, a little bit Lord of the Flies, and it did reference Lord of the Flies pretty openly, a little Agatha Christie, a little Clue. So I feel like she kind of picked, you know, sampled a little bit from different books, some good qualities to make this a fun romp for us. I thought it was a great book for October. I thought that the comparison between love and hate, and I just found it to be an overall comment on passion and how passionate things can be, and then how, I mean, passionate in a sense of love, but then also passion in a sense of absolute fury and frustration and anger. And then I agree that everyone was hateable. with maybe Hannah being the least hateable, but everybody, I just thought, well, I don't, you know, where do you go after this party? Hopefully to rehab or counseling, all of you. So those are my 5 cents.
Thanks, Charmaine. First of all, wow, so much to unpack there. I love the Texas-Canada combo. I don't hear a lot of those combos. That's very, you must have fantastic recipes and just a great mix of family fun. I think of a destination wedding, not necessarily that the person is fancy, but sometimes they're asking a bit of you as a guest. Maybe that isn't a destination you want to go to, you know? And sometimes I think a destination wedding, and I'm not saying, I mean, if I was invited to Canada, I would go, I'm there. But I'm saying there's sometimes where a destination wedding might feel like Jono did with the, I can't afford this suit, you know, and now I'm being asked to, you know, before I even get there, before I even get the gift, you know, I have to do all this. So you hope it's a good destination that you can kind of make it a fun vacation for yourself too. But it seems like, yeah, there aren't a lot of characters that we're liking yet. I'd love to hear if anyone does have the character, whether it is Hannah or someone else that they feel is the most likable. Because for a while, I did think it was, okay, so Charlie's wife seems like, because something's going on, Charlie seems to have an inappropriate relationship with the bride, possibly, but then we find out, well, you know, she is kind of flirting with Will and she's interested in him. So that made that weird. And then I was like, I don't know. I didn't love anyone either. And there wasn't anyone I was rooting for. Like, I hope they don't get killed or I hope they're okay. It was just more of kind of seeing it unfurl. And the next time we're in Books and Bars in person tomorrow, I'm going to bring a roll of pennies. I'll be dropping them in your drinks. So if anyone wants to, you know, drink the penny with us, it'll be fun. You come tomorrow, you get more swag, and you have to drink a penny. It'll be great. That was disgusting, especially in the age of COVID. I've never played the penny drinking game, but if you compare it to an American version of like a beer pong, I mean, that's pretty gross too, right? That ball is not sanitized when it hits that Coors Light. That's gross. You know, how many fingers have touched that ping pong ball? So either way, drinking games, always a problem. We tell our kids, don't do eating bets and drinking games. They're just not good for you, ultimately. But Elaine has her hand up. She crammed for this. Elaine, talk to us.
So I did cram for this because I knew that the ending would be revealed. I was like, I have to make it through the book. So I have a couple thoughts about Hannah and the ending, but I did want to say that I cannot imagine it set in Greece. Having been to Greece and the brightness of Greece, and I think Agatha Christie certainly has a good few murder mysteries set in Greece.
Yep.
So it's not as if, you know, good murder mysteries can't happen there, but the setting and all of the elements of the wind and the storm and the briny smell of the sea and on the bog that was already mentioned in the cave and stuff like that, it felt like it was another cast of characters that she had, and that sort of the relatively ominous presence of the setting I really enjoyed as that kind of overlay as you're just like barreling along. And yes, I was purposefully barreling along, but I totally agree that the structure really just like kept it zipping. Child in the other room. But I liked Hannah. I totally thought that Hannah would end up being the murderer because I liked Hannah, and I thought, oh, she's probably the least expected murderer. So I kind of thought it was going to be her. Although it did seem pretty apparent maybe halfway through that it had to be tied to Loner's death from the high school. So then it was like, oh, if I spent a little bit of time thinking who could be connected to Loner, I might have been like, oh, it's the wedding planner. But so it didn't really seem like a surprise that it was her at the end, but I was kind of thinking that it might have been Hannah. But I was anticipating more murders. I was like, I really was, the way it was going along and the way people sort of kept disappearing. I was like, oh, there has to be more than one murder, right? But I was wrong anyway.
Absolutely agree with you, Elaine. In fact, my wife and I were thrown because we were listening to the audiobook and it showed that we had such a larger percentage of time left that when it ended, we didn't think it was over. What we didn't know was what they were including in that time was the first chapter of the hunting party. So this whole time, the book was like half an hour shorter than we thought it was. And we were like plotting this out, like with our dog walk and everything. And then we had to listen to it and like break it down and be like, that's the ending. Okay. This is it, huh? There's not 30 more minutes. All right. Yeah, from the way it opened with the scream and we don't know what's going on and the darkness on the island, I really did think it was going to be, people start getting picked off or disappearing, and it wasn't just going to be about one. And if anything, this sounds morbid, but yeah, I could have gone with more of the guest list disappearing, to be honest with you. Okay, if your sister brings home a guy and then is like, I'm going to marry this guy, do you maybe mention that you slept with him before that happens? Or can you see the justification for not ever saying it to your sister? Any thoughts on that? But we have a lot of hands to get through first. If anyone's got something on that, feel free to put a new hand up. But I see a fresh hand here. Is it, how do I pronounce it? Ewa? I'm sorry, I'm not good.
No, it's good. It's Eva. It's a little bit
Eva,
different.
how are you, Eva?
Good. This is actually my first Books and Bars, so I'm very excited
Welcome.
to join. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna echo a little bit of what everyone else has said. I think it was definitely written to be an easy type of read that you kind of just power through, and it's kind of I took it more of as an escape from the real world, just to kind of you didn't have to think about it too much. You just kind of followed along in the book, which was sometimes that's the great thing about books, right? It's just an escape from the real world. But I thought I was going to actually mention the same thing Elaine mentioned. I thought the setting was actually one of the characters as well, right? Because it's the environment that you're in and just like the bog and some of the doom and gloom. So I thought the setting of the book was perfect as well. And I think I saw in your background that she had actually visited a similar island, and that's kind of what inspired her. So that's kind of an interesting tidbit as well. I actually thought it was going to be the sister after they kind of portrayed her as kind of this broken character. She tries to drown herself, and he runs out there, Will runs out there as the knight in shining armor, and he kind of sleazy guy whispers like, don't screw this up for me, right? So I thought that was going to kind of be the turning point where she just kind of snaps and takes him out. But it was an entertaining read. Well, I will say probably not my most favorite book I ever read, but it was definitely entertaining.
Thanks, Eva, and thanks for joining us. What got you to try Books and Bars tonight for the first time?
So I have a couple friends that have done it in the past, and this book was on one of my to read lists. I had finished it up a couple of weeks ago, so when this came up, I decided to join. So glad I did. It's always interesting.
Great, thank you. We're glad you did too. Thank you for your comments, and please come back anytime. Angela has her hand up. Angela.
Hi. First of all, I would not want to have a wedding on this island because they're so concerned about like falling into bogs and stuff. Like, people get drunken and stupid at weddings. Someone's going to get grabbed by like a claw hand. I will also say, even though it's a murder mystery, I really wasn't sure if this was going to turn into some kind of like The Haunting type thing where like ghosts were trying to murder people, because the way it was really set up, right? And you did wonder, and then there was like the whole incident where Hannah almost falls into a bog and almost doesn't survive, and you're just waiting for that whole sci-fi hands to reach up and pull her down. And she's mentioning it as she's going under. Couple things about the characters. First of all, Will is the most unlikable human ever. And the worst part is you get more and more mad at him as you go. And he's such a gaslighter. Like anybody that's been in a relationship or a friendship where someone gaslights you, it's just like a trigger book where you're like, man, I want to reach through the book and actually strangle him and maybe stab him with a knife. Jules is also frustrating because I get that she has all this family trauma and she feels abandoned, and her parents are just works of art in themselves. but she is so self-centered. Like the whole, she can see her sister's really struggling. She's like, I'm doing her a favor by her being in my wedding, and I did the right thing, but I'm gonna boss her around even though she's having like a rough time. I get she's bitter because she had a parent or parents or whatever, but like, don't act like you're a saint and helping her by making her do something that she clearly doesn't want to do. And then let's see here. It's also frustrating that she's all like, I'm in love with Will and I don't know, you know, I really love him. So this note's throwing me off, but yet she's sitting there telling Charlie about how much like she's better for him than Hannah, which is super frustrating. So that was annoying. I feel bad for Olivia. And I don't think she would ever have a reason to tell Jules, because obviously Jules is self-concerned and would probably be like, oh, you're making a big deal about it, if she would have been like, hey, this is the guy that brought me to your party. I also really liked Charlie until I found out that he slept with Jules while his wife was going through postpartum. I'm like, you are a redeemable character where you just felt like you had to be one of those guys, because we've all been that person at the party that probably didn't feel welcome. And then Hannah was probably the only super likable character because she cared about everybody but herself. And she kept checking herself like, hey, I'm being dramatic, I'm just going to walk away, or I'm being dramatic, whatever. So I really liked her. It was surprising that nobody in the story actually grows up. Like nobody becomes a better person as they got older, except for like maybe Hannah, or maybe Hannah was always like that, but everybody's like reverted back to school and we're just going to act like the same idiots and be mean to people. Nobody was like, hey, I got picked on, I want to be a better person. Everybody's like, hey, I'm still an asshole and I'm just going to be an asshole to everybody because I can. So I didn't like that. And I really hated how Olivia and Jules suddenly hugging in the end. Like they've been through so much together when Jules was super self-concerned. And at that point, it didn't feel like she had the full story. So why would she suddenly feel bad for her? Other than she slept with her husband or her dead fiance or whatever. That's a lot, but that was my.
That's a lot. That's great. Let me go back to, you said we've all felt the person that isn't welcome somewhere. I've never felt that. So if no one can explain the way that feels, I've never not felt completely welcome everywhere I am, but you know, you just got to bring that. You got to bring your own. Number two, I'm hearing a lot about like, okay, so obviously this would be a really different story if these characters were getting married a little bit later in life. Like, are they still holding on to, is this, they're still in the cusp of their 30s where looking back at school and what they did at school still means so much, and they're still sort of one-upping each other in this way? And I don't know, like, is it when you talk about none of them growing up yet, and no one has really changed by the ending, really, there isn't like, you know, someone that because of this now they're, you know, they learn this lesson or they're a better person. So do we see all these people just going on and this, you know, this is a story they tell and this happened and oh my God, but it really doesn't, they just keep going on being these incredible assholes?
And maybe they're only assholes in that group of people, right? Like we don't know what they're actually like off that island, but when they're all together, it's almost like that. They say like that retroactive thing where sometimes you go back to a time when you're with those people. Also, Charmaine, I saw your comment pop through too. I thought the same thing. I was trying to figure out if the two people screwing around in the whatever was Hannah and Dude. But I came to the conclusion, no, because she never left the party. And Oifi, or however you say her name.
Aoife,
is that how it is? Because you listened to it. Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of the book on tape. You know how to actually pronounce things. But like, she knew Hannah because she was there the night before and met everybody. So that was what told me. I don't think she was the one banging in the bridal suite, but I could be wrong.
That is the title of my, as B99 would say, Brooklyn 99, title of your sex tape, Banging in the Bridal Suite. It's almost too on the nose. But that would be a great book club title though, for our bodice ripper, Banging in the Bridal Suite. I think it also sounds like an Aerosmith B-side though, banging in the bridal suite. I don't know. Okay, I'm really digressing, but I like your points about, and this is maybe goes back to what Foley has done a couple times now, where she's talking about these groups of people that are actually, it brings out the worst in them when they're back together with these groups. They regress in a way, and you act it like, you know, it might be like when you get together with any of your, maybe your college friends, and you drink too much or something, and you kind of like, well, we used to do this, so when I get together with these people, we try to act like we're younger than we are, and then we pay the price for it the next morning, sort of thing. I don't know, interesting. I did not think it was Hannah. I don't think Hannah had an affair. I don't think it's ever named who it is, but it's like this is, it sets the stage for it. There's two couples, or there's two people that hooked up, and then they went back to their respective tables, so you knew they weren't together. But it's like, this is what kind of a wedding this is, what kind of a party this weekend is, in this group of people, that there's like just, you know, open, you know, affairs going on, and then they just go back and, you know, they're hiding it though. I don't know. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Feel free to raise your hand and chime in. But Rebecca's had her hand up for a while, so Rebecca, talk to us.
Hey, first of all, I want to say I'm a lot more retired than I was last time we all talked. So September 1st was my last day. So now I am.
It's awesome.
Yes, getting to read all the things. So it's fun.
Wow.
Big change in my life, which is great. Two, do you think, this is for Jeff specifically, do you think that he actually meant Mel Brooks, not Max Brooks, in his statement earlier today about, this is, who was it that said it?
So
Pete said the guest list is like Max Brooks' wedding event. Every gun on the mantle is going off. Fun stuff. And I am wanting to put that in my sketch note, and it I can't seem to.
Well, here's why I think he means Max, because Max wrote our Sasquatch story, and there's a lot of gunplay in that. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he is referring back to our earlier book from this year. And that does have a lot of
and that's one I missed.
A lot of Chekhov guns. Yeah, there's a lot of yeah. So
hopefully
but Max is Mel's son. So
right,
you know,
right.
But anyway, yes. So use Max because he's an author that we've read, and I want to give Pete. I think Pete knows what he's talking about.
Great. And thanks, Angela, for backing me up and being confused, because I was like, I hadn't read that one book. Okay. 3, this book was a little too, you could see the stitching, I guess I would say, you know, what you guys were all talking about, it was made of different ingredients and a little bit here and there. And it felt a little bit like that. I mean, the author obviously has a lot of skill, but a lot of it was a little too, okay, I'm going to write a very serious part here, and now I'm going to go a little slapsticky here, and I'm going to bring in elements from this author here and whatever. And it, so beyond that, I mean, it's definitely a romp. I definitely read it very quickly. I enjoyed it for what it was, and I did not see who all of them could have been. You know, it would not have surprised me if any one of those 4 people that really had an interest could have done it. And that's what I kind of, when I'm reading mysteries, I'm always bad at it. So I don't even try. I don't even play the game. So, so I just wait for them to tell me. And finally, my most surprising thought at the end is how much sympathy I had for Jules at the end. And it's mostly because that girl has needs and her sister obviously does as well. But I think in some way her sister is asking for help in a way that Jules can't. And Jules is, I don't know that she'll ever be able to fix herself. And then that kind of made me, you know, no matter how awful she was, she was the one that thought she had done the right thing. She attracted a killer. I mean, a horrible person. And so she's going to be asking that question her whole life. Well, how did I get so fooled? I should have known. I think the very first voice we heard was the wedding planners, right? Wasn't she setting the scene? And that's also kind of a classic trope, I think, in mysteries to, introduce a character that will end up having a lot of play later on. So anyway, I enjoyed it quite much. And thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Rebecca, and big congrats again. I'm interested to hear what's next for you, or if you just get to sketch doodle all the time now. You get to sketch note, all the fun stuff. But we can talk about that offline. But congrats, awesome. I hope to be able to see more of you, and that you have time to enjoy all of the books now. I don't know about you, but my mind goes to these places, but I'm going back to Banging in the Bridal Suite. I hear it to the tune of the song, There's a Meeting in the Ladies' Room. Does anyone remember that song? I need to cue it up. I'll probably play it tomorrow in person, and maybe sing, hum a few bars of There's Banging in the Bridal Suite. Anyway, there's a song called There's a Meeting in the Ladies' Room, and we need to get there real soon or something. I don't remember who sings it. If anyone does, feel free to chime in. Put the Spotify link up for it. I'll look it up later and share it with you. But Banging in the Bridal Suite, that is our bodice ripper that I'm going to write. Speaking of bodice rippers, Lauren, you love a good bodice ripper, right? Talk to us. Okay, just unmute, Lauren. Are you there? Still with us, Lauren?
Yeah, sorry.
That's right. Hi.
Thinking about
Welcome back.
bodice rippers, but I wanted to say early on, the seaweed episode had immediately you think, oh, his fellow, school fellows put that in and they thought it would be. But then when he confronted them and they seemed to be on it, very honestly say, well, no, we do it. That I was really wondering, well, if they didn't, who would? And then of course, innkeeper admitted to it. So I thought rather interesting.
That's a great point. And for a second there, and how early it happens in the book, it gives you just a little sense that maybe there will be a tinge of something supernatural or something, otherworldly, creepy here. And the idea of the ghost in the corner of the room too. Now, actually, for all the things that maybe aren't actually supernatural in here, I do think that there may have been a little bit of that, you feel like you're seeing a ghost, but it's because it's, the relative, that sort of a thing, but like how that can haunt you. But yeah, that seaweed part, good point. Cause I was like, oh, these guys didn't do it. Like they would have been laughed it off or been like, yeah, we got you. Someone would have, there's no point in them acting like they didn't do it. If they would be proud of it, that they're like, haha, you know what I mean? Like when you do
and that was
kind
a
of a
special
prank
thing they did there,
Right. Yeah, they would have been like, yeah, we got you, and they would have been like, who's the one who actually did it, would want credit for it, all that. So that was a good clue that you found there. Charmaine has her hand back up. Charmaine. Charmaine, are you still here?
I'm still here. I just wanted to say, I felt a little bad for Jono, because I felt like he, we talk about how nobody really grew up, but Jono kind of had a conscience about him, and his life was a wreck because of this guilt that he lived with. And so I sort of felt bad for him that he's the one who ends up getting tried and charged with a murder, because I feel like, man, you've been kind of paying your price for this guilt all along. And he really seemed like he didn't care enough. Like he had condemned himself already for what his part was in that, in Darcy's death, that he wasn't going to say like, wait, it actually wasn't me. He was just like, yeah, I kind of deserve to be here for my friend's, murder, because I murdered somebody else with him. And he seemed really resigned at the end and okay with it. And I kind of felt like, man, well, he's the guy that I sort of have some hope for, although I think he has addictions that are not as easy to just walk away from. So, and I wondered if Effie, right?
Yeah.
When I say it myself, I'm not sure. I wondered, I'm like, is she ever gonna, like, once I don't know what the statute of limitations are in that country for murder, but I wonder if she would be like, okay, now that you can't charge me, it was me. You know, she might come clean and confess. So I have that thought on Jono. And then earlier, Jeff, you had asked, you know, what we were drinking with this. And it's a little, it's chilly here in Texas, which means like 60, 70 degrees. So that's our fall. And so I wanted to, you know, curl up with some cocoa and read it. And unlike the characters in this book, I've grown up and I no longer can tolerate the sugar cocoa. So my drink of choice while I was reading is this skinny hot chocolate that has like 2 grams of sugar. And it's just a really nice, non-caffeinated, you know, just a little bit of sugar, a lot of dark chocolate drink. And that's what I drank while I sat on my porch and enjoyed this book.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I like your points about Jono, and unfortunately I do feel like he's going to take this fall, and he feels guilty enough for the past that he seems like he's not even sure if he did it or not, that there's a chance he did it, but he's like, what's the point? I'm guilty of another murder, and I have nothing else, no other reason to live for. He's not going to fight it. That's another part where I was like, really, this is the ending? Wow, they're not okay. And we're going to go with that. But yeah, in some ways, he is a mildly sympathetic character. You do sense that he wants to change, and you feel that he sees that being friends with Will is ultimately not good and has hurt him, and he has made mistakes because of it. And then, not that he can completely blame it on that, but his life has taken such a turn because of being in this group and with Will. And he doesn't really want to be a part of it anymore. And, maybe going to jail and feeling, that would in some way ease some of his guilt from the past is the path that he's just going to take for a while. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Effie is going to, come out after the statute of limitations. To something I saw in the chat, I would like to address. We bringing up this idea of, seeing a ghost and stuff. I thought it's believable enough that someone could be haunted, that they would see that, but it was another clue and a fun little twist of like, oh, the reason why you thought it was the kid that died in school is because it was his sister, and they bear a resemblance in the dark, standing in the corner, and because she's not as big as him, but like maybe at the time when he was in school they're about the same size, that sort of a thing. So I was like, okay, yeah, because it's the sister, and when you see a relative in the dark, he hasn't seen this person in a long time, some elements of that person could come through. So that's what I took it as. But if someone else has another thought, happy to hear it. I see Eva has her hand back up. Eva, talk to us.
So just a thought, kind of as we've been discussing this, right? Rebecca mentioned earlier that she felt bad for Jules. A couple people have said we feel bad for Jono. All these characters are really, really broken, right? They've all had like major trauma, and none of them have ever dealt with it really in a healthy manner. And so, I mean, their lives are all kind of spiraling. So is that what makes them unlikable almost? Is that they're so far down the spiral that they're just unrelatable, and that they just have never kind of dealt with the pretty traumatic things that have happened in their life. And then like even Effie, right? She's held on to her sister's death for so long. She jumps on, Jules's wedding is coming. I'm going to offer up this huge discount to get her here, and that's how my revenge happens. So I don't know. I don't know if is that why they're so unrelatable? Is that because they're just so far down this dark spiral that they can't even deal with real life?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, should we feel more sympathy for them knowing what we know, or has Foley written them in a way that we either that's a shortcoming on her part, or she didn't want to, doesn't think that this story needs it, that we need to worry about those things. Do you think Foley wants us to be more sympathetic. And would she be surprised as the author that many of us have said these are not very likable characters, and I wasn't really rooting for anyone, and maybe we're able to pull a couple that, well, a little bit, okay, maybe a little bit of this person and this person, or do you think it's a shortcoming in the writing? Any thoughts on that? Intentionally unlikable, or should we like them more, or is it a failing on our part that we're not sympathetic enough, and that maybe we don't understand how broken people are, and how hard it is to change and get help? I don't know. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Feel free to raise their hand. I see Angela's hand is up though. Angela, hi.
I do wonder, to your point, now that you mention it, I wonder if that's a piece of creating that mystery if anybody could have done it. Because if you don't like anybody could do it. Like, I don't know if anybody really thought Hannah did it, because I think she was probably the most likable character. So I do think that that's probably a very creative way to make sure that you don't know who done it. Also, Charmaine, yes, the party favor should be therapy for absolutely everyone. I know, Jeff, you and I have talked, like, I just don't know what kind of books I really like. And I always thought murder mysteries were the ones I like. And that's why I joined book club, because you just tell me what to read and I read it. And sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I love it. I don't know that this is a love or a hate, but I really liked, so I read this on the plane to Virginia, and I'm typically a fall asleep on the plane person, like put on a movie, maybe I'll pass out. And I could not put this down. Like, I was yawning and my eyes were watering because I was so tired, because it was like a really long weekend. And like, I read through the whole thing super fast. I did like that they switched the characters. Typically, I'm not super obsessed with that. But I do like the mini cliffhangers that they had on there. But I do think that all the characters, as much as I didn't necessarily like them, also Femi. I realized that Femi was actually a somewhat likable character, because he almost was that slight voice of reason in the group of boys. There's like, oh, should we do this? And he'd still play the pranks, but sometimes he's like, hey, maybe we should go back. Hey, maybe this is unsafe. And it did seem like he was a follower, and I think he was kind of an underplayed character as well.
He was a huge disappointment.
Angela, to one of your first points there, do you feel a lot of book clubs or your other clubs read murder mysteries, or is that what you think most book clubs read? Or are you saying you just read it because every once in a while we do it and it's what's assigned? I didn't know if I got that point.
So I used to love like that kind of stuff. Like, that's the kind of movies in that I like. I grew up reading like kind of more of the like Anne of Avonlea and stuff like that as a kid and stuff like that. I was a super avid book reader. This is really my only book club. So whatever you assign us is what I read, Jeff. Sometimes I offer to join other ones, but you are my primary love of the book clubs. So whatever you pick is what I read. And that's really the most expansion I have, so.
Okay, I'm looking for all the right emoticons for this one. Thank you, thank you. All right, I will keep trying to keep you interested and entertained. Well, I've been very open and honest with the group that, you know, for the first, I don't know, like 15, maybe 13 or so years, we barely read anything like this. I actually thought it was maybe too light and wouldn't be enough discussion worthy aspects to it. And, you know, somewhere along the line, I remember just hearing from people that I thought were smart and respected. And one of them said, you know, one of the ways you stay sharp is keep reading stuff like this that challenges your mind, that, like, you know, it's like you're playing a game with it. So you're reading it, but you're also, you know, you're trying to assemble all of this together. And I love a good game, you know, so I thought, oh, I should maybe read more murder mysteries. So I'm still looking for other ones. I mentioned Ruth Ware. I don't know if you guys have read her or not. I had The Death of Mrs. Westaway, I think is the name, on our list. And there's been a few others that have come up. But, you know, we read that 7.5 Evelyn Hardcastle, The Seven Half Deaths, which had some different elements to it. You know, this was a much more conventional, you know, even though there were hints at possible supernatural things happening, this ends up being, you know, this is a very realistic, conventional sort of story. And then there's other ones where, you know, we spice it up, you know, or we read Anthony Horowitz. What was that one called? You guys remember the mystery from like a year ago that we read? Another one there's 250 books. I got to look at my list. I have the list in front of me. But
Mexican Gothic, I think, is a mystery. Mexican Gothic.
Yeah, but that one definitely had, I mean, some otherworldly supernatural elements, right? I mean, that to me was like Gothic horror at times, and very supernatural, which I think is great. You know, we definitely delve into stuff like that too. But I guess what I'm thinking is this one falls squarely into that, like Agatha Christie. You know, we're all, you know, it's like the drawing room. It's like Clue, right? You know, we're all together, and somebody died, somebody here did it. You know, what are the, you know, candlestick in the conservatory, you know, and it was Professor Plum, that sort of a thing. That's, you know, what we're breaking it down like with this one. This one didn't have all the different endings that Clue the movie had, though. So maybe we need a choose your own adventure sort of mystery. But although that's sort of what the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle was a bit like. But yeah, feel free to send me some more ideas. Magpie Murders. Thank you, Via. There it is. There it is. Yes, Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. Another one that was very English, very conventional, you know, and nothing out of the you know, out of the realm of you know, fact, what could happen sort of thing. Lauren, you're back with us. And Lauren, can I unmute you? Talk to us.
I just wanted to say I'm an avid Miss book fan.
Yeah.
And one of the books I've read all along is Lee Child Does Jack Reacher, who's an interesting character. So I happened to come across Diane Capri, who is under Lee Child's approval, has written her own series that follows up on every Jack Reacher novel. And for some reason, the FBI is trying to get a hold of Jack Reacher. They make him sound like he's done something bad. So I haven't about 4 of them, and they all refer to his adventures in the last book, and it's kind of fascinating in an odd way. But since I've retired again, I've started, you know, I'll read an author and I'll go back and read everything they've read. And I saw Louise Penny up here, and she's one of my favorites as well. I've read all of her books.
Yeah, she's come up a few times. I've been interested in checking out Louise Penny. I was going to mention Tana French. We've read Tana French, and she writes with sort of another Irish, like the Dublin Crime Squad is her group. I don't want to give us too much Irish stuff, you know, you guys. It's not March or anything. I don't want to, you know, date you with too much of that. But The 13th Tale I see that in the chat. We read the River one by Diane Setterfield. We haven't read 13th Tale yet, although I've heard it's good. In fact, I see that on my kids' English syllabuses now. So anytime a book transcends to the level of it's being taught in high school, and it's not that old, I almost wonder if, oh man, it must have something worth talking about there. Or it's just, is it made for teenagers? I don't know. But 13th Tale, yeah, that looks good. Anyone else on Jono or any of our other characters, where we think they end up here? Did anyone, I mean, how does this rate for you for a mystery? Is there enough stuff to talk about here? Is there, I mean, was it a good mystery? Were you, you know, surprised by it, interested? Did it keep you going? Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on Charmaine?
It was not a great mystery for me. I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I did think, and I sort of mentioned this earlier on, I thought it was a good contrast in passion, right? In love, in just like here you have this event that's normally like the happiest, right? Where people are rose-colored glasses and they think the best of this person. And that's contrasted with everybody that comes on the guest list is not the best. And they kind of bring out the worst in each other. And just the passionate hate that you can have, the different types of passion. I thought that was quite, that was interesting to me. You go from like what we expect to be like a super happy event where everybody's just thrilled, but then like there's this undercurrent of like real loathing and hate and meanness and you know, being fake. And so I thought that was interesting about it. So maybe not a mystery, but in a thinking of it that way. And then I just wanted to say too, I think Hannah and Charlie were interesting because you have everybody else that's become super successful and they don't have kids. And then Hannah and Charlie have 2 kids. And like people say like, oh, you live out in the sticks and you don't even have food there. And so I thought it was kind of an interesting comment about like getting into that city life of, you know, having everything so close. And then they were kind of like, I teach school and, you know, we have these 2 kids and just their difference in how they went, but I still didn't find them to be redeemable characters. So that was the other thing that I wanted to say and share.
Thanks, Charmaine. Anyone else have something that we haven't brought up yet? Any other questions you want to hear the group address? Things you wanted to talk about? You read the book and you wondered about it? Feel free to raise your hand, bring it up. I see Via's hand. Hi, Via.
Hi. Oh, I just want to chime in because a little bit while ago you asked, what did we think the author wanted us to think about the characters? We can't get inside the author's head really to know what the author wanted us to think about them. But my sense of how this author did this book is that it was so completely plot driven and details on working out the motives of these characters that, and there were so many characters that they just were, most of them not fleshed out enough. And I do think that there are some mysteries, say a Louise Penny or you know, other a little bit more classic mysteries where you do get more character development that to me, that makes it more satisfying than just run, plot, although that's intriguing and interesting and you're in suspense and you're wondering what's going to happen next and you're trying to guess what's happening next. All that is great, but I think a really great mystery can have a little bit more character development that draws you into the story more. So that for me, that was the shortcoming of this particular book, that it was, I think the author was just concentrating completely on the plot, and it was all very short and very quick and interesting that way, but I did need a little bit more from the characters. Yeah, so I didn't like most of these characters, but I would chime in and say, yeah, Jono to me, every once in a while was sympathetic. I felt that he had, you know, he was paying for the past crime or his involvement in it. And he showed some restraint, although he was, he tried a couple of times to get back at Will with the, you know, best man speech, but then he held back and didn't totally lose it. And then taking him to the cave and didn't go all the way to harm him. So he showed some restraint and he really had a conscience. So I did relate a little bit more to him than some of the other characters. And Hannah was at points sympathetic too, but on the whole, I just felt I needed a little more character development to get involved in the story.
Thanks, Via. And you mentioned that you feel Louise Penny has a little more character development in her mysteries, as an example.
Yeah, she does. Well, I've only read a couple of them. She has a really long, you know, series with her main detective. And I actually got into it in one of the later ones where he was near the end of his career. But I found that very, very interesting. And it's more of a classic feel to it. You know, they're longer novels. They do get into the character development quite a bit more. So yeah, I would recommend her.
That's an interesting point. Sometimes I feel I don't want to, I'm hesitant to read a later, story in a series if I don't, know what preceded it. But I feel like if there's any story that you should be able to do that, it should be just a murder mystery, and you maybe get the broad strokes of what this character is from that. But I've thought about that. Like if you're missing too much, there's an interesting series. I bet some of you have read some of them. Jim Butcher writes, and they are supernatural mysteries that deal with stuff like vampires and werewolves and ghosts and everything. And he's based out of Chicago. And I've really liked a few that I've read. And I would say one of the all-time best audiobook narrators I've ever heard is the actor who played, he was in Buffy. He was Spike. I don't know Buffy that well, but is that a real character? Is that a thing? I have to, otherwise I have to look it up. Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
James Master,
yes.
James.
Yes, something
Masterson?
like that.
Yes.
Yeah, is Spike like a
definitely
bad guy?
Spike, white blonde hair, hot, sexy vampire.
Incredible reading. Like I was like, I listened to a couple of them and I'm like, I want to get all of these read by him. It is so like just the voice like in your head. It's really, really cool. So he's this supernatural detective. The Dresden Files are what the overarching, what they're called. And anyway, if you guys have read them by Jim Butcher, they're kind of cool. And they combine this murder mystery aspect with like supernatural stuff, a little out there. But that's one where I feel like, I don't know, like, do I need to know if he dealt with werewolves before he dealt with ghosts? Like, can I just jump around, or should I read all these in order? But yeah, I think it'd be fun to try, maybe as we go along. And if we do like one of these a year or something like that, to just keep trying different authors that we haven't read together as a group, whether it's Ruth Ware, Louise Penny, others, and just, compare and contrast then, and maybe find our favorites. I mean, we always used to do this thing at Books and Bars where we would try not to repeat the authors so much, because the idea would be, if we can, shine a light on this person, this author, or introduce you to them in some way, and then on your own, get all the Michael Sheinbaum books you want, but we're only going to read one. Over 17 years now, we have some favorites, and it's kind of hard to deny them. It's kind of exciting. Like Amor Towles has a new book out, The Lincoln Highway, which is supposed to be fantastic. And I know we've read his two others, but how great is Amor Towles, and how much do I want to read The Lincoln Highway? And would you guys read it with me? So it's like, he could be a 3 for 3-er. Plus, I need someone to dethrone Neil Gaiman at some point, so maybe it'll be Amor Towles. Who knows? Angela's got her hand up. Angela, talk to us.
I saw your comment in the chat about Freddie. I think he knew, obviously he knew about the plot, but I don't know that he planned or knew she was going to kill him. And mostly because of his comment when he sharpened the knife. He's like, why would they need a knife this sharp to cut the cake? Was like the actual comment he made. He's like, someone's going to hurt themselves. This is bad news. I think he knew about like all of the other things. I agree that probably knew that there was going to be a confrontation or a reveal of like, hey, we know what you did. You're a horrible human. But yeah, the fact that literally was like, oh, why would they need a knife this sharp to cut a cake was like his comment. So I don't think he actually knew.
All right. Thanks. Rebecca.
Well, actually, I think the knife was something that she decided on at the last minute. So I don't think he had to know how she was going to do it. She took the the lights going out, the weather, I think it was more of a crime of opportunity. There probably would have been lots of ways that she could have done it over the course of the days. So I do think that what was that? Whatever, not Jono, but Freddie knew, he just didn't know how. And I have a feeling their relationship has a lot of her not explaining everything to him and him just kind of accepting it. And she's a fascinating character. I do think it would be interesting to read more about what she did, because being morally ambiguous the way she is, you want to respect her, because she did what everyone else should have done, and she did it in a way that left her, scot-free. But you also, I don't know, it felt almost like justice that happens when people come to a particular part of the country and do bad things, and then the natives can rise up against them and, not kill them with impunity, but, so the bad English man killed her, nephew and brother. And so she got to have revenge on him. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, yes, it's there's a lot of threads that we could pick from this book. And so I totally agree. More character development would have made it even more successful, I think. But the ending felt to me like very wrapped up very quickly. The stitching.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when I thought I had another half hour, and I felt like I couldn't believe it was over. Lauren, you're back with us. Talk to us.
I agree with Rebecca. At one point, it specifically said, the innkeeper said in somewhere in there, I just wanted to him. Freddie wasn't aware that what was going on. I just want to talk to him and find out why he did this. But I think the opportunity, the lights went out. Oh, and here's a sharp knife. What more could you ask for? But I do wonder, she said the wedding couple specifically asked for the sharp knife. Do we think that's true? Or did she just think might not be a bad idea to have a sharp weapon handy? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jules
feel like-
wouldn't have allowed anything that wasn't exactly to her specifications.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, was it because the knife? I'm thinking of that. The tradition of where you mash the cake in each other's faces and stuff too. And you share.
And Jules did that.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyone else anything we haven't touched on yet that you want to bring up? Any other aspects of the story? Did you feel any takeaways from this? I kind of said up top, maybe this isn't, that much of a heavy book, and we sort of agree that maybe this is just a plot driven, sort of a fun, lighter read. But is there something maybe she's trying to say here, though? What do we think Lucy Foley is trying to say with this particular mystery and this story? And again, to my earlier, if anyone has read others by her, if they can pick out other themes and stuff. Charmaine.
I read Mexican Gothic right before this one.
Okay.
And so with that as like a backdrop, I felt like Mexican Gothic was this real comment on taking down the patriarchy, and we have to do it together, arm in arm, as a younger generation, together with whatever gender you are, or however you are, you're whatever. It's all in the team. We're working together to break away from the systematic pass down of this is how it operates. So I came into this book thinking about that, and I feel like this is a real #Me Too sort of setting where okay, we kind of, if we don't speak up and address this kind of behavior, at some point it just snowballs into this kind of behavior, and people are continued to be harmed. So, but again, I say that knowing that I sort of had a preset point of view coming into the book, where I had already read a book that I felt like had that same story. And also the takeaway that I'm taking from this is I will not be attending a destination wedding, especially if it's on an island anywhere. Like, I will just send you a therapy coupon because I think you might have issues if you're doing a wedding this way. Like, let's just get you into counseling and I'll pass.
But Charmaine, remember, you had the Canadian destination wedding. So have you changed that much that you're turning your back on your Canadian family now?
Well, we didn't go to an island.
Okay.
We were at Glacier National Park. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I would do it differently now. I would
Very
probably
nice.
do it less expensive wedding. So.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, everyone would do probably, you know, it depends on where you are at your stage in life and what kind of a wedding that you plan and stuff. So, yeah. Thank you to Rebecca. She put in the chat, if you see the file there, that JPEG, that it's a sketch note of our discussion. So Rebecca, if you haven't seen before, she does these incredible details where she takes pull quotes and comments that we've made. And it's a great way to, even if you miss a discussion, you could watch our video, you can look at the sketch note and get an idea of it. I want to remind everybody that if you can't make it at any time, we do still record our Zooms and put them on YouTube. We have a channel for that you can watch our discussions. And if you want to share with someone else who maybe read the book and can't make it, they could always use this after their reading, and hopefully they'll join us at some point. That would be great. We are meeting tomorrow in person at Local Roots, and anyone that's local and available, feel free to join that. It's always a different discussion with a different group of people. Sometimes we have overlap, but it's been a lot of fun. I think the weather's still going to be nice, and we'll be outside on the patio for one more event, and then we're going to move inside to the private room they have in the back there. If for some reason it's too cold tomorrow night, we're free to move inside also. But it's been great at Local Roots. So if you haven't had a chance to join us there in Richfield on 66th Street, please give it a shot. We have a schedule there for the next few months, but we only have our books picked through December. And again, they are Transcendent Kingdom. And I've put a link to our next Zoom in there. I can share it again if you guys would like. And if anyone didn't get or didn't see any of the Dune or the Last Duel movie passes and you want me to repost those, you can always also just send me an email or a direct message, and I'm really easy to find. And I respond fairly quickly on things as much as possible. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We have a website, booksandbars.com. Thanks again to the friends. Hopefully you can make Opus and Olives this weekend. Thanks to Elaine. And just want to make sure if anyone else has anything else on this book or something tangentially related that they want to throw out there, feel free to raise your hand. The only thing I don't like is if you come to Books and Bars and say it was good, but they didn't talk about X. You got to be the person to bring up X because someone else might be thinking it too, so don't be afraid. Love to hear from anyone that wants to speak, but otherwise, if not, I will hope to see you either tomorrow or in early November. Thank you guys so much. It was a great time. Good night.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.